In this episode we cross the Irish Sea from Milford Haven in Wales to Kilmore Quay in Southern Ireland. Considering the possible waves on this sea, we had a very comfortable sailing. Crossing a sea over a longer distance does require careful fuel planning. I therefore want to first concentrate in this episode on considerations on nautical fuel planning. This is a video of my series Adventures with my Trawler Yacht Whitehorse, a Grand Banks 36. So let's get started with my considerations about nautical fuel planning. There are 3 points I would like to talk about. A. How much fuel do I have to bunker to get safely from A to B? B. How much fuel influences boat stability? C. Economical considerations of where to bunker fuel. And D. Legal implications of tax laws in the EU and non-EU countries. To point A. The first and most obvious thought is naturally that we need enough fuel to come safely from A to B. For this we must know what our mean usage of fuel of our boat is. For my Grand Banks 36 with twin engines Perkins Sailors M135, which have each about 6,000 cubic centimeters, I've calculated from my experience in the first days that we needed about 12.5 liters diesel per hour in total for both engines. This implies running the engines at about 1600 RPM. The resulting speed would be between 7 and 8.5 knots. Taking a journey over the Irish Sea as an example, which was about 70 nautical miles, it would take about 10 hours. 1 knot is 1 nautical mile per hour. This results in 125 liters of diesel. As indicated in an earlier video, I always try to have at least between 2 and 3 times the needed fuel in our tanks. For our crossing I need therefore about 375 liters of diesel. Point B. When in school for getting my shipper's license, we did a lot of calculations on boat stability. Boats are usually much higher above the water than what they are down under the water. My Grand Banks measures about 3.6 meters height over the water without mast, while it is only deep 1.2 meters. This demands that there is enough weight below the water to more than compensate the weight of all what is over the surface. The key to this is the center of gravity of the boat, which decides on the stability of itself. The center of gravity should be low, especially if the boat is going offshore. Therefore, the engines of such a boat are situated as low as possible, as they and the gear case are very heavy. Each of my engines weighs about 600 kilograms. Then there are often heavy steel bars and other ballast near the keel. The engineers also calculate the fuel and fresh water as help to balance the weight. The tanks of a boat are therefore also situated low in the boat. So filling up the tanks means gain of stability. I've tried to calculate the center of gravity of my Grand Banks 36, and you can see the results in the Excel sheet. As I'm not an engineer and I've not planned my boat self, this might be not fully correct, but I tried to take into account as much as I could. It shows on my boat that the center of gravity is about 1.4 meters above the lowest point. Then one has to consider the movement of the fuel in the tanks when the boat is rolling because of waves slashing on the sides. I had learned that the tank filling that is lower than 30% of the tank will not have so much impact, because the weight of the fuel is comparatively low. But when you get 30 or 66%, this weight gets very important, as it can destabilize the boat when splashing from one side to the other. In boat stability calculations, this results in a higher vertical center of gravity. Above 66% tank filling, it is so full that only a small part of the fuel can rock the boat from one side to the other, and therefore it's not important. My two tanks on my boat hold about 1200 liters total. So either I should have less than 306 liters of diesel or more than 800 liters of diesel. When crossing the Irish Sea, I would need about 125 liters and should have left about 800 liters out of stability reasons. Therefore, it was wise to bunker at least 925 liters of diesel. I chose to fill up completely. This leads to the economic side. While in the area of the EU, laws demand that the non-commercial boat only can use the same type of fuel as usually personal cars. This fuel is much more expensive than the colored diesel that is used for commercial boats. The UK and Norway, which both are not part of the EU, have large fishing fleets, and also boating is very important for the public. They therefore allow the use of colored diesel also for leisure boats. So it was economically wise to fill up my tanks in Wales with the cheaper diesel, which would allow me to travel all along the Irish coast until I reached Northern Ireland, which would be again in the UK. This leads to some legal aspects. What happens if I sail in EU waters, but I do have colored cheap diesel in my tanks? In Germany there was a case where custom authorities demanded from a yacht owner to empty the tanks of colored diesel and fill it up with usual diesel. I didn't want to risk this. As a lawyer, I therefore had to take steps. The international law of seas say that the boat can drive with the diesel it has in its tanks and does not have to pay customs on this. The German praxis was therefore unlawful, and this was also confirmed in Germany in a court. But I wanted to be sure. I asked the German customs and tax authorities to confirm in writing that I did not have to pay taxes on my bunkered diesel. They did so, and I have this confirmation. But they made it clear that I was not allowed to have separate fuel canisters. These would have to be emptied and paid taxes on. As a final word on this topic, in this episode, I would like to point out that fuel consumption dramatically drops when driving at lower RPM. Home in Norway, I take it easy. I drive with around 1200 to 1400 RPM, and the total fuel consumption drops to around 6 liters. That's about 50% what 1600 RPM would need, while the speed only drops to around 6 or 7 knots, which is only about 15% lower. If you so far enjoyed this video, please press the like button and subscribe to my channel before watching the rest. The plan was to cross the Irish Sea to Wexford in Southern Ireland. But also this time I had to replan. When ringing to the harbour master at Beckford to reserve a berth, I was informed that there were strong currents and unsafe grounds ahead of Wexford. I was instructed to travel more south to Kilmore Quay, where a safe and wet harbour was available. The distance did not change much. I had planned with about 130 kilometers or 11 hours of travel, but we were more south than anticipated, which meant that we had to travel the next day about 30 kilometers further. Kilmore Quay proved to be a very nice place, and we did not regret having had to put our first steps to Ireland at that place. We left Milford Haven just about at 9 o'clock. This time the sea was low, so we had to go into the lock and wait for it to open before we could enter the Milford Haven Bay. On our way out to the sea, we had to watch out for commercial traffic in Milford Haven, while admiring the large installations for unloading oil of large tankers, as well as the gigantic vessels themselves. After having reached the open sea, we could fix the autopilot and enjoy an easy and calm sea life. Unfortunately, we didn't experience dolphins again, but sometimes the surface of the sea was very rare. Our goal was first to get to Wexford. About 2 hours before reaching Wexford, I called the harbour master to get a berth. He inquired about my experience of the harbour and the coastal environment there, on which I had to say I had none. He then made it clear to me that Wexford was no option for us. On the one hand, Wexford had no wet harbour and the tidal difference was about 3 meters. And on the other hand, the Bay of Wexford was dangerous. There were moving sand banks, always changing with the current of the river's lane. He advised us therefore to head south to Kilmore Quay, for which he was also responsible, and he could also reserve a berth for us. It meant that we had to change our course south to get to Kilmore Quay. Kilmore Quay is situated just around the southeastern Cancer point and therefore on the south coast of Ireland. It's a small town with a population of about 400 inhabitants, and it has some nice pubs. The sanitary installations of the marina were simple but good enough for one night. We enjoyed a walk around the town and then got a good meal in a local restaurant, followed by a pint of Irish ale in a pub. The following day we turned north again. The next planned harbour was Dublin, but it was too far away, being at the southern coast, and I had to replan to Nautical, where we wanted to have the next night stop. This will be covered in the next episode of this series. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe free of charge to my channel to support my work. And don't forget to press the like button. Any questions or remarks will be answered as soon as I can, and please take the opportunity to get into contact with me. Thank you again for watching, and goodbye until our next journey.